Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live stream. I'm Lynn Baez, Enterprise Vice President of Facilities and Workplace with McKesson, and your first Vice Chair of the IFMA Global Board of Directors. While we wait for everyone to join, let us know where you're tuning in from. During today's discussion, we will explore how building technology has evolved, the potential risks of leaping before you look, and what organizations can do to mitigate vulnerabilities. Please leave your questions in the chat box for the panelists to answer during the Q&A. With that, let's introduce our panelists. We will start with Brian.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm Brian Haynes, Chief Strategy Officer at FM Systems. I've been with FM Systems for about 12 years, been in software related to the building industry for over 25 years. Before FM Systems, the number of years at Autodesk, I've been an IFMA member longer than I can even count. So it's been really exciting. I'm excited to speak with you today, Lynn, and looking forward to being joined by Vineet. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And with that, let's bring Vinny into the discussion and introduce himself.
Thank you, Lynn. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining this session today. In my role as Vice President of Open Blue Enterprise Solutions at Johnson Controls, I have the privilege of working with customers across the globe in pursuit of their business goals for smart, sustainable, and healthy buildings. Like Brian, I have been with Johnson Controls for 12 years, came with a background of technology consulting and services, and have enjoyed my journey, right, watching the transformation with adoption of technology in the buildings world.
Thank you so much for that. And gentlemen, before we get started, let's take a moment to recognize World FM Day, which is today. As we celebrate this day, I'm reminded of the incredible journey I've had in FM, from navigating complex challenges to implementing innovative solutions. Every moment has been rewarding. Here's to the amazing facility professionals worldwide who tirelessly ensure our environments are safe, functional, and efficient. Let's continue to make a positive impact together. Discover how you can join the celebration today at worldfmdayinfo.org. Any quick reflections, Vineet and Brian, before we get started?
Yeah, I started my career as a space and occupancy planner at the University of Arizona. So as a facilities professional, I've really seen the profession expand, especially from a knowledge standpoint, and really up-leveling where facility managers and facility professionals sit within organizations. I think we're becoming more and more important. Data at our fingertips are allowing organizations to make strategic decisions, and I couldn't be more proud to be involved in this profession.
Couldn't agree with you more, Brian. How about yourself, Vineet?
Yeah, look, I am one who, as a regular occupant, had so little appreciation and recognition for what it takes, right, to run all of these facilities successfully. And look, we spend about a third of our life at work, although in a regular work week, it feels like we spend all of our life at work, right? So, workplace experience that enables comfort, productivity just makes a massive difference, right, in our levels of engagement and throughput. And knowing the types of challenges that FMs work with, right, with dated systems, all different varieties and versions of mechanical control systems, etc., all the different service providers, it's hard to imagine, right? So it has been, a tremendous journey understanding and getting better appreciation of these challenges, and then knowing where introduction of technology can help make their lives simpler.
Completely agree with you as well. And it ties in so well to our discussion today. So let's get started. We'll spend a little bit of time of this evolution that you were discussing. So, Vineet, let's start with you. Over the past decade, how have you seen technologies specifically built for our facilities evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I would say in the decade plus that I've been here, there has been a significant shift in both the technology that's available and the mindset around adoption of this new technology. Look, in my consulting world, I came from a world that was focused on financial and insurance service businesses, who typically are very early providers of technology, right? Using big data for insights, forecasting, etc. Right. Coming to this industry, I saw that there was a decent level of adoption of building automation technology, right? Security access technology, fire systems, some of it driven by regulations and safety, others, to simplify operations. But what I saw was a tremendous opportunity for software to be that orchestration layer right on top of systems that could significantly create, power several more use cases and workflows to help facility managers, energy managers, maintenance technicians, or even senior executives to know how their building is performing and what they can do about it, right? So my firm belief has been the more prescriptive guidance that a system can provide, the better it is for me as a user, right? And then over the last few years, as I've watched how skilled trades have been hard to get and onboard, right? And of course labor rates, I believe we are at the right intersection of using technology to augment human capability.
Oh, I'm so aligned with you on so many of the elements you mentioned. I'm interested to hear from Brian. What other factors have you seen that might be contributing to this building technology evolution?
Well, really, Lynn, it just didn't happen overnight. There's a lot of technologies that I think really enabled us to be where we are right now and where we're going. One of them is, frankly, cloud computing, almost infinite computing power available to us all the time for all of this processing of a tremendous amount of data. We also all have one of these now. This is like having a supercomputer in your hand, and it's changed the workplace experience. It's changed accessibility to information. So mobile is another, I think, a really strong component, and connectivity and bandwidth. The last one I think is really interesting. Don't think about very much is battery life. 10 years ago, we started to see Internet of Things, IoT devices like sensors start to make their way into facilities. And those batteries would last maybe a couple of weeks. And it was a real problem to help to prevent them from scaling. Now we've got battery devices lasting 5, 10 years for occupancy measurement, for indoor air quality, for being able to take information from building control systems and send it up into the cloud. I mean, it's really, I think, a whole series of things that have come together that are putting us at probably one of the most exciting points in the evolution of buildings that I've ever seen.
Such a fascinating point in regards to battery life, and it's great time for us to take a poll question to see where people's considerations in this space are. We'll take a moment and drop a poll question for our viewers today. If you can just check on the live poll, that's where menti.com is, and you can see the number listed there on the screen. We'll take a few moments and see what the results are. I will say, for both of us while we're waiting to see the results, you know, it's interesting to use the word evolution, right? Because there's so much dynamic engagement and the rapid pace of this all. Evolution sometimes lends itself to a terminology that's slow moving. Any thoughts quickly on use of that term and where we're seeing the rapid pace continuing to evolve and grow?
Yeah, I think where I'll probably say is it's not a bad word. Sometimes slow moving, but being more deliberate about what problems you're solving and where you make the most impact for the investment is okay, is absolutely okay as a strategy, right? So I think Brian would say the same thing. We are firm believers in working customer back, right? Looking at specific problems and solving them versus putting out a solution that's looking for a problem, right? So revolutions can happen, but the best way to get people to embrace technology and move with the times is to help them with that transition, right, from point A to point B.
Yeah, I think just adding to that really quickly, I think we sort of have these periods where it feels like everything is moving a little slow, and then suddenly you see this massive uptick. I think, oddly, one of the quickest times that we saw was the global pandemic. People inside of facilities, inside of technology companies providing capabilities to buildings were really innovating very, very quickly. And we started seeing things like Vineet and I will talk about things like AI, which I think is absolutely accelerating us right now. But it's kind of peaks and valleys.
A great term of use. We'll get into AI in a little bit. And while we're talking about some of those buzzwords, our poll results are in, right? In regards to how much do you know about digital twins, a technology solution that facilities be more strategic and efficient in maintenance and ESG. Any quick reactions to where people are on the spectrum on our group today?
Yeah, I find these poll results kind of fascinating, actually. I'm not surprised by the aware of it, but don't know specifics. I'm a little surprised by the never heard of it. Um, it's interesting. What do you think, Vineet?
Yeah, yeah, definitely interesting. But like, when you look at the left side of this chart, and I think that's something we all identify with, right? I mean, one is the definition of what a digital twin really means, and
Right.
then second, the applicability in the real world, right? It is a challenge that we are seeing in the industry, and I think we owe it to our customers, to this community, right, to better explain and position how this could apply to their specific business and operating parameters.
Well, I'm glad a few questions later in our chat will be devoted to some of these buzzwords and what they mean. So glad to hear that that is what is going to be raised. You know, I think we're gonna see the next set of poll questions come through, and I think we're gonna pause on poll questions after this question, just so we can get back to some meaty dialogue.
Great. I do love seeing the results, though. It's interesting. It's sometimes surprising, sometimes it's validating.
Yeah.
Vineet knows this. We we actually meet on a weekly basis with a number of our colleagues to discuss really what digital twin means in a lot of ways. Just sort of there's not a one definition fits all. It's actually something that is evolving as well. We keep using that word, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, and to not make it sound mysterious, right? I mean, we have been talking about digital twins, from two primary lens, right? One is the concept of data and how it's organized, and the relationship between various, spaces, equipment, other types of entities that you would expect to encounter in a facility, right? We firmly believe that that is the underlying model, the system that can drive a lot of the outcomes, right, that FMs look for. On the other side is the visualization, right, which is what we have mostly seen in the market as how people think of a twin. And the visualization can no doubt be super powerful, and some of our best customers use those visualizations very well. But I think what's critical is to really do that mapping. How are you going to use that visualization? Is that really going to change the way you would run your facilities? Is it going to improve your response time, reaction time? Is it going to help you simulate various conditions? So if there is a case where those use cases are important for the business, no two ways, right? A 2D, a 3D, driven experience can be super powerful, but we don't believe that it's kind of a, one solution fits all type of an approach, right? We don't believe that that's the right way to look at it.
Agreed. And let's get into that connection because I do think there's an opportunity for us to talk about that connected innovation as a team, as a group today. Brian, can you share any additional insights or trends you're seeing on how this new technology is truly driving connected innovation?
Yeah, when I apply that to buildings, and because that's specifically what we're all really concerned about these days, I'm starting to see information being correlated, and a lot of it is information availability that's brought to facilities managers by the building itself. It could be the building control system, it could be sensors that are in the building, it could be by inputs, it could be by security inputs, it could be badge swipe inputs, sensors measuring indoor air quality, as well as being able to bring in things like energy. and actual utilization of how the facility is being used from an energy standpoint or from a resources standpoint, as well as measuring occupant interaction. These kinds of things, Lynn, in the past would have been sort of discrete problems that facility managers were trying to solve. And frankly, humans aren't great at massive data sets and making really complex correlations, and computers are sort of purpose built for that, and software can be purpose built for that. So we're now able to take really complex types of data from, telemetry data from the building control system. It's kind of telling you how healthy it is and where it might need some help, or what's going on within the facility, and then occupant interaction and measuring that, air quality. We can take all of that and sort of lay it over top of one another and see really powerful insights as to way buildings are actually operating. We're not just guessing. We're seeing them tell us how well they're doing, where we have opportunities, and we're actually starting to look at taking this sort of connected data, and we're starting to look at sort of brass ring problems. One of the biggest one that I've been talking about for 20 years is total cost of ownership. Like there's this thing where people have been hypothesizing how to measure how much it actually costs. We're getting close to that, and it's not because someone has built a brilliant spreadsheet. It's because the data required to do that is now becoming available to us, which I think is an absolutely enormous opportunity.
That's a phenomenal example because even in my role today, I struggle with that, right? Bringing that TCO to individuals. Benita, I'd be interested to hear from you any other specific examples of where you're seeing the systems going to much more of this connected innovation for smarter, more efficient outcomes.
Yeah, Lynn, I mean, I'll go back, like maybe take a step back from the innovation and first say, what's the hardest part when you enter a facility? It's like looking at all those systems and trying to figure out how do I connect this damn thing into something else, right? I mean, do they have the ports? Do they support protocols? Do they support wireless tech? Do they have, the right security layers? Can they be authenticated, right? So just I think the biggest change in technology and compute that Brian referred earlier is how much you can push down to the edge, how much smarter that edge has become to support all of these protocols and be that single unifying point, which is one can connect to a number of systems, and second have that layer of cybersecurity so that we don't freak out when we see what can be potentially a single point of failure or a single point of cyber exposure, right? So ability to connect things, to communicate things in a more standardized way, and then orchestrating things, whether it's in the cloud or some other environment, right? I think has been a big step. The other one
Well,
has been just orchestrating data, right? I mean, once you connect, everything's up there. Now, what can be really different, right? I mean, one example that has always inspired me is how do you look at the intersection of security data, video monitoring, HVAC data, and bring them onto one platform which can help ensure that response times are better, SOPs can be triggered on a timely basis, right? You have video to confirm what's really happening in a space before before you send people or roll out a truck or do something similar, right? So like going back to what Brian said, I think COVID helped further intensify that perspective that we can do a lot of things remotely, and now the technology is coming through that actually helps build these experiences very quickly.
as you're mentioning in the market, right, it's really helping us have that acceleration of autonomous building technology.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in the market right now, Vineet, that's really helping shift our industry towards this smarter and more potentially autonomous engagement with our infrastructure and buildings?
Yeah, I think the biggest realization is that the system can be smart enough, it can produce all of the data and insights, but if you are still reliant on a very limited capacity team to go execute those actions, right, there are naturally imminent delays. So lot of customers, right, lot of our facility managers are now mature enough to look at technology from a return on investment payback period perspective, right? They are challenged by their executive leadership, by their CFOs when they are making the case to deploy technology. So the more we can shrink times to onboard technology, deploy it to their buildings, and the more we can shift right? The time to value, time to action, right? That's where the magic happens, right? And that can't be achieved just by technology. But where technology helps is to say that, look, I'm collecting this data, I found these insights, I'm also giving you recommendations on what you can do about it. And then if I can actually execute on your behalf, it literally cuts down that cycle time, right? At the same time, if we can provide visibility and auditability to building operators so that they're not working blind, right? The system is not taking over their job. The system is augmenting the constraints, the set points that they would have defined, right? Kind of creating that box for AI and machine learning to operate in, right? Then there is, a strong foundation to make that shift.
I really appreciate your future thinking comments here. I'd like Brian to jump in with some more of this type of future thinking. So, where do you see all of this taking us in the next several years?
Yeah, that's an exciting question, Lynn. I think one of the things that I'm seeing become more and more prevalent and more important is what I call soft data. There's hard data coming from the building systems and the data coming from security systems and IoT devices. The soft data is, if I have a beautiful building that's the most efficient building in the world and no one wants to work there, obviously utilization is going to be incredibly low. It is the kind of building we want to have. I think we're starting to see the increase in importance of workplace experience. How does it feel? What's it feel like to commute to a facility? Are there opportunities for flexibility when I get there? What's the purpose of coming in? Why am I there to meet with other people? Am I getting kind of a heads up? So there's this whole other kind of information that's coming from occupant experience. And I think combining occupant experience with the types of things that we're talking about, building control systems and building automation, will ultimately start talking a little bit about autonomous buildings. None of that stuff works unless we measure how people and how assets interact with the day-to-day operations of the facilities. I see that as an area of innovation. We're seeing a lot of really interesting things happen. A lot of it happening through mobile devices, a lot of it happening through things like predictive analysis, through things like artificial intelligence and machine learning. But really, let's face it, the most important thing for our facilities, for the most part, especially when you're talking about where people primarily sit to do their work, office buildings or maybe high touch healthcare, universities, how people interact, how they feel, do they want to be there, what their workplace experience is, and are they having a healthy, productive day when they're there? I think all of that data as well is combining. That I think is going to be the thing. I mean, when you're excited every single day to go in and you're going to be in a beautiful experience and you want to work there and the people you like to work with are going to be there and the building's also healthy and sustainable and we know how much it costs to do that, that's kind of nirvana to me. And I think that's the ultimate end goal. It's not just technology for technology's sake, it's technology for improving the built environment's sake.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. And as a person that works for a healthcare organization, that really resonates. And I think about, to your point, there's so many other elements to this that we can explore, such as AI, machine learning, advanced building controls to help give us that nirvana that you're talking about. Vinita, I'd love to have your insights and thoughts here about some of these buzzwords that our FM professionals are hearing about, such as AI and machine learning technology. They're all over the news, right? Can you help us in the discussion that Brian was discussing about this nirvana of this intersection of all of this soft and hard data, how this may impact our industry as we go forward?
Yeah, I guess you think about technology. You see a lot of consumer examples, right? Gen AI is obviously all over the internet, right? We are seeing our favorite search engines already incorporate Gen AI right now. When you Google anything, right, you'll see Gen AI kind of producing the initial response right at the top of the page before you see other search results. So the world is changing, right? But what we also see as very relevant as a user is that I not only want generic information, I also want the specificity applied to my situation, right? I mean, the one thing about buildings is even if they're constructed and deployed exactly the same way, they'll operate a bit differently for a multitude of reasons, right? So the ability to tailor the output of AI to your specific conditions, right, is what makes the difference between success and failure. Right. What we have been focused on as an example is augmenting our large language models with building specific data to produce recommendations which are more actionable. Right. So that's definitely a do different. The second part is also around change management, right? How do you use this technology? How should a facility manager be thinking about their operational procedures when technology gets inserted into that, right? Like, as an example, should they be asking their staff to log into the system every morning to check on things before planning out their day? Or should they expect the system to tell them proactively that, hey, here are the three things that you should care about. By the way, these two should be resolved today, X else, the executive floor is going to be uncomfortable and you're going to receive a lot of calls. Or, hey, a potential system might be fading off, or talking about batteries, hey, XYZ sensors are going to run out of battery life soon, so you need to schedule a visit to do battery replacements, right? So I think that's where user experience starts to make a big difference as well, on where in their life cycle it sits and how much the system works for them and adapts to their need, versus versus them as users trying to go in again and again, and having to do 24/7 type of monitoring.
All those couldn't agree with you more on where we're headed to, Vinny. And I do know from our prior poll question, there was a little bit of a lack of knowledge of the term of digital twins, AI, machine learning. Brian, in your own words, how would you describe these terms?
Yeah, I think sometimes they can sound a bit mystical or maybe magical, or super scientific, but in truth, AI is just the intelligence of machines and software as opposed to the intelligence of humans and animals, right? I mean, that's it. That's what AI is. In machine learning, we hear that often. It's really a specific kind of algorithm applied to AI that learns over time. I think of it this way, Lynn. When we're all in elementary school and we're young, our knowledge set is quite small. We go through these experiences in life and we gain greater knowledge, and then that allows us to be able to tackle bigger problems and have a deeper understanding of things over time. Machine learning is really the same thing, except it's just how machines do it. They get better and better with larger and larger data sets. What they're incredible at is synthesizing data from incredibly large amounts of information. I don't mean to put humans down, but we're not good at that. We're good at a billion other things, but synthesizing data that's vast and complex and massive. If I said to you, what's the history of the United States? And I gave you a spreadsheet with a list of uh, when the states entered the Union and the date, that's a very simple question. But if I ask you that same question and say you're allowed to go to the Library of Congress and just do all the research you want, a human is probably, to do a good job of that, is going to take a very long time. AI and machine learning algorithms can do that in seconds, and it's going to give you an answer as long as it's got highly accurate data that's been curated and is reliable. You're going to get really probably deep and powerful answers. The other thing is, Lynn, that I think is fascinating is, this data, a lot of this data has been available for a long time, but it hasn't been provided to the end users as facilities professionals in a way that makes sense. It used to often take somebody who's maybe a facility engineer to understand what fault number 120-731 means. You're looking it up in some kind of manual and you're trying to figure out what that is. AI is doing things like natural language interfaces where it just simply tells it to you like you're a human. It's speaking to you. The machine human interface. I think that's one of the biggest things we're seeing in AI right now is the ability to be able to use natural language to ask and get questions. I think that's really fascinating. I think right now it's proving to be probably one of the probably most easily implemented and quick impact forms of AI that we're seeing. You can simply ask questions. Back in the day, when I was a space and occupancy planner, if I wanted a space report, I went to an analyst that we had on our team who had spreadsheets and they did a lot of data analysis. And maybe in a couple of months, I would get a report. I can get that in seconds now with really interesting types of answers. I could say, what building in my portfolio? Maybe I have 100 million square feet. Maybe I have 1,000 buildings. Which one of those buildings right now is operating most effectively? And I want you to take into account demographics, costs, energy savings, indoor air quality, employee health, who's happy. Here's who's staying at the company longer in which regions. I mean, really crazy, complex questions, and you're going to get an answer. You just ask and you get an answer. And I think that that is really where we're going. And I've said this before. I know Vinny's heard me say it. I think in the future, Lynn, in the not so distant future, buildings are going to be more partners to us than our problems. They're just simply going to feel like an extension of us. It's a little bit like a science fiction movie where I'm on a spaceship and I'm talking to the ship and it's giving me answers. It's kind
Yeah.
of that's not far out. That's actually here now.
Well, I
Yeah, and I would add
appreciate
there,
that. And
Brian
oh,
and
please
Lynn, right?
continue.
Yeah, sorry. I would add to Brian's thing around adaptability, right? You can take the same solution, and if you're deploying in Canada versus the Middle East versus in Singapore, right? Just so different weather conditions, right? The same rules just don't apply. So the ability for AI to understand what operating environment it is in and accordingly toggle conditions, right, and be a better trusted advisor is where it needs to go, right? And it is very challenging, but the more we crack it, crack the solution that way, the more adaptability, and the more adoption, I should say, we'll see across the world.
And I agree, right? I think adoption and curiosity are really going to lend itself so
Yeah.
well in this space for us as we go forward. But I'm curious to get a few more poll questions out and wrap up the few that we have left. So let's go back to the polls and finalize the last set of questions that we have, and we can do a few reactions as they come up. And then we will finish out with our last standard set of questions. We've gotten some questions in the chat and we are excited to ask those. So we'll continue on with a few poll questions here. We'll wrap up with my last set of standard questions for both of you, and then we'll take a few from the audience. So excited to see folks taking about 20, 30 seconds to have their responses noted. Really interested to seeing even just the poll adjustments as live as we're going through this. Any reactions from you, Brian or Vinny, on what you're seeing here today with these responses?
Yeah, this is interesting. I like these answers. I like them better than the digital twins answer, where there were a lot of people who didn't. What do you think, Vinny?
I think we're seeing Chat GPT at kind of reaching the peak of its hype curve today, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, and I'm not saying hype in a bad way, right? But just the amount of recognition, the amount of press it has had, right? And it is awesome technology, right? I think it goes back to how do we make this really useful and applicable to our end users.
All right. And I would agree. I think, most people are hearing the terminology, they're leveraging it in some way or adoption. It's pretty available in the marketplace. I'm interested in this question because generative AI is something that seems a bit more, you know, in a far-reaching goal. They're not sure if it's going to take place in their organization. They're struggling with their role and place in it. I'd love to hear your considerations and thoughts about where does FM play in this space?
Yeah. I've got some interesting thoughts on that, Lynn, because I talk to a lot of organizations, and I don't hear very many of them that say, "Oh, we're hiring a ton of new people to help run our facilities." We're just not hearing that. But we're being asked as facility professionals, and here we're talking on World FM Day. As facility professionals, we're asking our profession to do more and more and take on greater responsibility than ever in the past. I mean, we've got facility professionals now who are experts in global pandemic response and the ability to be able to understand cybersecurity and securing their building control systems and doing things that we simply weren't asked to do in the past as complexity increases and technology increases. I like to think of AI as, assistance is coming, right? Like honestly helping us to scale our teams in times where we're probably not going to be bringing in a lot of people to help us do this ever increasing amount of work that we need to accomplish. Think of it as having your own personal digital assistant, right? That, but like super highly credible personal digital assistant that is really going to help you do things. And when you're walking down the hallway and the CFO or the COO of your company says, Brian or Lynn, which one of our buildings has the best utilization? And in the old days, you'd be like, well, I'll get back to you on that. Now it's like, oh, it's the building in Washington State in Seattle. That's the one. You know what I mean? Like that ability to be able to answer those questions is why I think these kinds of technologies are a little bit like the cavalry, right? They're coming and they're available, and I don't think we should be afraid to try them out and see if we can get that help that we need.
Agreed. Agreed. Let me confirm if we have any more poll chat questions. And
And
then
then
we
as you
can,
do that, I'll just reflect on the polls that are up on the screen, right? Again, super interesting because I've seen a lot of our customers be very inquisitive about, what Gen AI can do for them, right? I mean, you have one side of the house that says, hey, I'm subject to so much more regulation that seems to evolve all the time, right? I have to meet certain certification standards. Can Gen AI just do it for me? Right, understand what has changed, take my data, reproduce it in a different format, get it submitted or emailed for me. That's one side of the house. You have another side of the house that says, hey, I get so many VIP visitors and I need to give them a super differentiated experience. Can Gen AI or AI in general recognize them, do face recognition, call the elevator, tell them, greet them, direct them to their or guide them to their destination, right? So everything from something that's super operational to something that's super experiential, right? Again, all of these are true possibilities, right? Goes back to what's the most important priority and how it fits into your business, right? A retail customer might think of it very differently than a healthcare campus or an educational campus for that matter.
I would agree, and I would say, some people consider that opportunities and quite exciting. Others would see them as challenges that they're being faced as FM professionals. So, I'm really interested to hear for both of you to close the following way. I'd like you to talk about some of these opportunities or challenges by providing one or two that you may hear of from your clients or from the market, and then how we can combat these challenges or savor and take advantage of these opportunities that our audience members could take away as a quick tip or a practical solution to support them in some of these opportunities that they're foreseeing. So, Vineet, I'll let you continue on this path since you had such a great example before on any others that you might see.
Sure, Lynn. And I think, challenge number one remains poor data quality, right? Everything is so data driven and data dependent that when you don't get data or you get poor quality data, it impacts everything through the value chain, right? So solutions that are able to mitigate, have contingency measures to account for data misses, data gaps, be able to extrapolate those values, right? And still keep the analytics healthy enough and actionable enough, right, are super important in this mix. The second thing I would say is, as more of AI gets deployed, right, trust is a factor, right? It's a huge factor. I mean, just think of the world of autonomous cars. We are all intrigued by them. We love to try them, but how many of us are willing to forsake complete control of our cars by letting them auto drive us all the time, right? Very few, right? So we see a similar trend, right? That's kind of happening in the world of buildings, right? We have a fantastic autonomous solution for central utility plants, and every one of our customers has preferred to operate it in a recommendation or an advisory mode, understand what it says, try it out, and then turn it into auto mode. And that's a transition, right? That's change management in play. So we see something similar here, right? The ability to understand what reference models, what logic, what parameters are being used by AI to recommend actions is super important for humans to trust them and work with them. And the last thing I would revisit one of my previous points is change management, right? Technology is supposed to simplify, not complicate processes, right? So understanding the whole operational chain, understand where technology fits in, and how you cut from 10 steps to 3 steps while still having impactful outcomes, right, is one that's super important as we see the future of technology adoption. Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, Lynn and Vineet, one of the ones I see most often is that all of this stuff sounds fantastic, but I have got a lot of buildings. Maybe I have a university campus. I have 100 buildings. A lot of them are old. Some of them are 200 years old. I can't put this, oh, I can't do this. These buildings are too old. The truth is, maybe 10 years ago, that may have been true because a lot of these technologies required base building design and construction. We were putting a mechanical system in, and we needed to do something that was like super intelligent. The truth is, that's not the case anymore. There's a lot of easy to implement technologies, and you can even put a lot of this stuff in old buildings. Any building can become smarter, frankly, in my opinion. You just need to really focus on the problem that you're trying to solve. One of them that a lot of people have been doing recently is trying to measure actual utilization. That problem can be solved through easy to use implemented technology that's cost effective, that can go in the oldest buildings that you have in your portfolio. The ability to be able to measure indoor air quality, there's another problem that you can actually address. There's a lot of this that you can do now, and you don't have to wait for the next like marquee building that may be coming into your portfolio. And honestly, a lot of it even applies to leased and owned facilities. I would say, the challenge is maybe you can kind of have a little bit of gridlock mentality. Like, I can't do this unless I do it for all of my buildings. Start somewhere. Pick buildings where you need to solve problems. Use the technology. Use what Vineet and I have been talking about, and you'll see impacts almost immediately. Uplin, you're muted.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I was jumping at the bit to say how much we really appreciate all of the contributions that you have provided to us. We did receive two quick questions from the chat that I wanted to address before we close. The first was on that future proofing element. So, Will, thank you so much for your question. Do you see FMs or key clients purchasing equipment that technology has built into that can be future proof 24 to 36 months, or that we know is on the horizon in the near term? Do you see them implementing with some of the systems and controls for things like smart TVs, screens, sensors, where they may be purchasing that item today and it might be obsolete very quickly soon after? So can you give any either Vineet or Brian some thoughts into any of this kind of future proofing when it comes to purchasing?
Yeah, where I would start, Lynn, is that there are several aspects of equipment and systems that are coming with future-proof technologies right now. These might be sensors that are installed and not used, or in other cases, right, the provision to add sensors or retrofit sensors when the need arises. But what's allowing all of this to happen, whether it's in the world of smart TVs or smart building technologies, is really about over-the-air software updates, right? Just like our smart thermostats at home, right, keep getting refreshed, our smart TVs keep getting refreshed. Similarly, the technology, right, for a true smart building today has the ability to get those software updates and stay up to date versus the traditional, on-prem BMS type of way you installed it once and did not upgrade until right 5, 7, 10, 15 years when you actually had a strong reason to upgrade, right? With technology, with more connectivity, with cybersecurity, it is super important to stay up to date. And I think any solution provider worth their salt would want to put out products that do that.
Good deal.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, Lynn, and I'm seeing this other question from the LinkedIn user that actually kind of dovetails into that a bit. It's really about flexibility and openness. The truth is, nothing lasts forever, but a lot of buildings these days are averaging 25 years, sometimes up to 75 years, the average length of life of a building. And being able to, build something that is going to last forever is probably unrealistic. However, future proofing is something that you can do. You can build flexibility into the way that you design your space. You can build flexibility into your thinking when you're selecting solutions that solve these problems. I believe openness and connectivity are probably two of the most valuable components of helping you future proof the decisions that you're making. um, I'm seeing that really increase. You know, when you look back in the past, and I've obviously Benita's been at this a lot longer than me when it comes to building control systems, because FM systems didn't come into the Johnson Controls portfolios a year ago. But I've been sort of on this really steep learning learning curve myself. But you know, in the day, if you go back 20 years or plus, there were protocols like BACnet, and I looked at those things, and I think they're kind of hard to understand and not easy to sort of implement quickly. We're seeing connectivity and the ability to be able to bring data into systems through like APIs and things like just stuff that's being done to make it easy to connect data. And I think if you're connecting data and you're selecting solutions that are open and flexible, and you're thinking about your buildings as open and flexible, you're building in future proof into your facilities in the way you're thinking. And I think that's the best way forward to ensure that you're not making a choice on technology solution that is obsolete the moment it goes in. I think I think we're seeing a lot less of that, especially since openness and flexibility are really key buying decisions these days.
So appreciative. We'll end our questions from our audience members almost at the beginning. So a question was raised. There are an ocean of data-centric possibilities. Where do you suggest we start? And
Hmm.
Brian, I'll let you answer this question first and finish off with Benit.
Yeah, I love this question because this is really where reaching out to like organizations like yourself who maybe have done things and seeing what their experience is, reading success stories, reading and often at success stories you get insight into like what the failures were during it as well. It wasn't just the successes, but what went well. I will tell you, you're probably not going to do anything that someone else hasn't already tried. So reaching out to others, getting feedback, even if it's from competitive organizations. I think facility managers is really a profession that I love the camaraderie and the sharing that occurs amongst the professionals. So asking, I think, is really one of them. The other one, the second part of that is really define what you're trying to solve. Buying technology for the sake of buying technology is never really successful. Understanding what your big hit problems are and then researching and selecting the solution that addresses those specific use cases. And doing anything in a vacuum also never works. Asking, collaborating, looking at those within your organization. I think one of the best things you can do is ask the people who use your facilities, whether they be employees, patients, students, visitors, ask them. And that will give you a list of, I think, the high value use cases that you're trying to solve for, and then select the solution that targets them specifically.
Resonates well. Benit, any other comments you'd like to share on this question?
I'll just build on what on top of what Brian said, right? Just find out your most impactful problems, right? And then ask yourselves the question, right? Why is it making the most impact, right? Is it the biggest consumer of my time and budget, right? Why are our current systems not able to solve our problems, right? What would ideal or success look like, right? And as you go through almost that five why model, right? I think that will help you identify where you need to focus. And once you know where you need to focus, right, solutions are available, right? Case studies are available, right? If you're solving a regulatory problem, if you're solving, too many hot and cold calls and you want proactive work orders, you want to solve a reporting problem, you want something else. I think, I mean, all of these are well defined categories and have suitable solutions, right? So it's a pretty basic framework to kind of get out the door and start solving. The harder part becomes when you start choosing technology and going back to that question around future proofing, knowing that things will truly connect to each other. So open is important, API based integration is important, right? Standardization is important, of course, all of that. And then finally, right, it comes back to return on investment, right? Am I going to spend money in a way that I'll see returns in a reasonable time frame? one of the aspects of maturity in this business has been, hurdle rates, coming down from 4 to 5 years down to more like 2 years, right? In 2 years, most CFOs want to see return on investment for such technologies. So that's part of the conversation today, right? And the more it is numbers driven, the easier it gets to drive to a decision and action.
Well, Vinny, I'll start with you and then close with Brian. The truth about autonomous environments is really where we started today, right? The
Yeah.
topic of our session. Any closing comments or thoughts that you'd like to leave the group with?
I would just say, look, autonomy is coming. It's in front of us. It's happening in small portions already, right? And people should see this as a journey, right? You're not going to wake up one day and everything is operating robotically, right? But there's a lifespan, there is a transition cycle, there are several different on ramps to get on that train, right? So think of it as a journey. Again, stay focused on those outcomes, and autonomous should ideally help you accelerate, right, your progress towards those outcomes.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much. And Brian?
yeah, I think autonomy is in closer than we may think. It's here in a number of different ways. The really great news is that we're talking to facility professionals on World FM Day. And the good news is, for a long period of time, we're still going to need to have the grown up in the room, right? As autonomy occurs, having professionals check the way buildings are operating. That's not ending anytime soon. Really being there with the knowledge set that we have and the expanded knowledge set that we will have and capabilities, really, I think, creates a runway for our profession that's just really super exciting. And I look forward to seeing it.
Well, on behalf of our participants today and myself, first, happy FM Day to both of you, World FM Day. And thank you so much for your valuable contributions and insights. It's been a true pleasure to speak with you both this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Lynn.